Good evening, everyone. Welcome to round 4 of the Simufur iRacing GT3 series. I'm Newbie. Joining me in the commentary is Kady, as well as Paliku'i in the broadcasting booth, making sure we're able to see all the action tonight. We are at VIR today, Virginia International Raceway, a racetrack that we don't usually see around here in Simufur, but we are in iRacing after all, and it's actually a very famous, a very popular track here within the iRacing community. But yeah, very interesting. Kady, how do you think about this round tonight?
I'm excited. I think this is going to be another great one. There's a reason why this track is so popular on iRacing. Like every time it comes up, people are always driving this combo, and taking a look at just our practice laps here, you can really see why it's this big roller coaster of a track. Really, you can't really get a camera shot around here without catching one or two like crests of hills and uphill and downhill, huge elevation changes. And it's kind of this series of twisty bits, like we see Klaus picking his way through here, combined with these really long straights. So it's really going to benefit our drivers if they can stay close through the tight technical sections, that it can set them up for a move at the end of those long straights, sort of in those three big braking zone opportunities that you have around the lap here. So it's really interesting dynamics, really interesting in terms of like a car setup perspective. Just making sure that you have a lot of downforce to get through the high speed, but not too much so that you're losing time on the straights. It's a balance that our drivers have to strike, and I think it's going to make for some really interesting racing.
Yeah, and definitely looking at this track as well, you'll see that a lot of the corners, what you see outside of those outside of the track is grass, and slick tires definitely do not mix. This is definitely going to be a test for drivers to make sure that they stay on the limit, but they don't go out of it, because once you go out, it's pretty hard to get back in, especially how slippery the grass is here. As you see, these are kind of almost sideways there, but just then turn 3, if you go a bit too wide, it's going to be hard for you to recover, and that's turn 4 gone, and it's going to be a couple more positions if they don't keep it well. But yeah, joining us, looking back in the standings, Plasma has missed round 1, but if you look at the standings right now, Walkman is still P1 in the standings. Behind him will be Plasma and RK. Oh, as you see,
There's a bit
Plasma
of a tap there.
Yeah, so it's, as you can see here, VRR is pretty narrow, so you gotta be careful. Klaus here is our P3 drivers. It's gonna be our 3rd driver, and actually no, that's the 4th driver on the standing, and 5th driver will be Suzuka. It's going to be a very interesting grid right now, as you can see here, as the standings get pulled up. Walkman's P1 right now, but Plasma has gone back-to-back P1 despite missing round 1, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see if Plasma is able to get P1 in the championship standings. RK is right behind Plasma, Klaus in P4, Suzuka in P5. You can see after that, it's a very close fight for P5 and below. For Fez at P6, only 4 points behind Suzuka. Guyando in P7, Izor in P8, Pascadi in P9, all 31 points, all the way to 42 points. P10 will be Jack Mace. P11, Elias Venya has missed a few rounds, but definitely back. Is they are back tonight? They're not back tonight, so their position is gonna drop as the drivers start to get points throughout the season. Athena Leclerc in P12, Oli Rex, who are in tonight, gonna be at P13. Tombstone, Newbie, at P14. They're definitely on track tonight. Anton Bursbo, a new driver here. Already 15 points for us. Definitely interesting to see where they end up tonight to get more points. Josiah Wusky, unfortunately, after Road Atlanta, has definitely not been here, but hopefully they'll be able to be here at the remaining rounds just to get more points and maintain their position on the grid itself. Hakio Itsumetsa at P17. Strong run last time around. Vex in P18. And yeah, very interesting to see how these drivers, some are still on, some are not on the grid anymore. But being consistent definitely will be a key here to make sure that you keep on moving up in the points. Vex at P18. Me, Newbie, hi, at P19. I'm on the commentary this time around. Mali at P20. Camille at P21. Ada Wolf at the car 621 at P22. Zim who did pretty strongly last time around P23, Freya at P24, Quincy, who's not here tonight, unfortunately, at P25, Wolfing at P26, Rekoware P27, and ending the entire. Oh, that's not there yet. Aspir at P28 in the. Ooh. And Kelchan at P29, Bosch Boy, who unfortunately isn't here, but they do have 5 points here on the grid itself at P30, the Simufur car, accompanying Fastfox in front. JPEG, who I think some of us have not heard, has had an accident recently and has broken their arm. Glad to see that they are here tonight, but hope they have a speedy recovery at P31. Skylar Vixen at P32, they are not here tonight. Casp at P33, and that's 0 points remaining for the standings. So it's going to be interesting to see if anyone else at the bottom gets points. Kady high at P38. That's unfortunate. Rack at Atlanta has caused them to not have points tonight. So it's going to be interesting. If you ever come back next round, Kady, will you be back next round?
I am planning on it. So you know, just for these last couple here that we're going to be doing at Laguna Seca, a personal favorite track of mine, and Fuji, which is a track that I'm not super familiar with, but I'll get there with a little bit of practice. But yeah, this is going to be, I think, a pretty crucial round, especially for kind of the top of our standings here, because we have so many drivers who, you know, even outside of the fact that we've had, you know, so many different race winners. I believe we've had 3 different race winners in 3 different races, or 2 in 3 races. I believe that's correct.
Yeah, 2
so
races.
It's, you know, even ignoring sort of the fluctuation at the top of the field here, it seems like, you know, every weekend we come out on a new round and we have different people, you know, fighting for the podium. Some new drivers, in fact, sometimes will come and fight for the podium. So there's definitely still a lot of sort of liquidity in our top 10 here as Paliku'i Sametsa makes their way through the oak tree complex here. Unfortunately, no oak tree remaining, as it was chopped down, but the spirit of the oak tree stays in the corner, I'm sure. So yeah, aside from that, you know, we've got a lot of fluctuation here in our top 10, in our midfield, and we're if it's anything like the last couple rounds that we've had, we're definitely going to have a lot of moving around throughout the field, and we'll see how qualifying shapes up.
Yeah, definitely one of the few tracks where things will shape up, given how technical this track is. Despite it might be a little bit easier on the lower class cars, especially in the ever so famous MX5 Cup. It is definitely a very technical track for the GT3 cars. Pretty narrow to have any sort of fight, as well as the fact that, especially this corner here at turn 13, turn 14, the roller coaster section here, if you don't do it right, you're gonna run wide for turn 15, and that's gonna be either a power up or at least some positions lost if you're fighting for position. That's going to be pretty frustrating for some of the drivers here, and it's going to be a really test of skill, as well as just how much how much you have practiced, as well how used to you are here. As we just talked about it, David Young, P18 on the side of the track, definitely running a little bit too wide here at the sector 1. That's turn 4, and coming to turn 5, I can see here, oh, dangerously coming in to return to track. That's going to be very interesting to see drivers.
And that's going to be something that we're going to want to, you know, take a look at throughout here, is that, you know, when cars are going off track in these really tight, fast sections, it's so hard to actually, you know, be able to rejoin. So you have miles and miles of grass here to work with, it looks like from the outset. But, you know, the drivers might have to really, you know, cut back on at a much farther point in the track than they're used to in order to do it safely as we enter into our qualifying session here. Just like all of our other rounds, we've got 20 minutes of qualifying action coming up as Plasma begins to make his way out of the pit lane, our first car on track.
Yeah, as we are waiting for them to do their warm-up lap, definitely want to give a warm welcome to David Young, as you just seen there. A new driver coming into the grid this time around. Definitely interesting to see that Simufur, as you said, despite round 4, we're still getting new drivers here to mess up the calmness of the standings. Definitely good way to see the standings keep increasing over the weekend, and it's definitely nice to see drivers still joining in. We are never short of any new drivers. We definitely encourage any solo drivers that are interested in joining us to join us on the grid, despite not being as fast as Plasma. We are definitely very welcoming on any new drivers that want to come in. We don't discriminate. We don't look down on each other. We always try to help to make sure that we just improve as a team, as a community as a whole. At the end of the day, sim racing is a hobby for all of us. It doesn't matter if you're the fastest driver in the world or the slowest driver in the world. We're always just happy to hang out. So if you're interested to join us, definitely can check us out in the Discord below. You can also look at us throughout social media on Blue Sky as well as Twitter. That's where you see all our updates. That's where we post what we're doing, where our VODs are, announcements for new series. We also have a Telegram channel. I don't think we have a link at the bottom, but if we do, we also do our announcement post there. So if you're interested in following Simufur as a group, definitely could check out in the links in the description below, as Plasma comes in through the third sector through roller coaster, turn 14, turn 15. I think it'll be interesting for us to see a lap here in VIR on board with Plasma as you come into turn 17, coming to the front straight. I think I'm gonna be the one to give you a rundown here, given I have gotten some practice here. Down into the front straight, you have to make sure you hug it just tight as Plasma does, coming to turn 1. Keep to the left for a hard braking right hand turn on the tree marker, braking in. Don't run too wide here, or else your rear end will step out here. Power through it. Very weird corner, almost like a double apex coming to turn 2. Here, gotta be brave. Slamming on the brakes on turn 3 before coming into a turn 3. Make sure you don't run too wide here, or else you get an off track. Turn 4, hug the inside. Don't go too wide here because you're turning into turn 5. Barely on the power. Make sure you don't step out, or else it's a track invalidated. Make sure to keep it as straight as possible down into turn 6. Now, the long straight that has multiple corners here, 7, 8, 9. Make sure you hug the curves as much as possible. Take them as aggressively as you can, but make sure you don't compromise the stability coming into soft bend, because that's a lot of time lost here. Oh, as Plasma might get an off track, and that's maybe an invalidated lap, unfortunately. But yeah, as you can see here, VIR, a lot of undulating corners, and definitely need to watch out to make sure that you get actually a validated lap. But we'll keep on board here just to see how interesting the lap here at VIR is, coming down to a very long back straight. As you can see, big mountain in the climb. Make sure you stay in 5th before you go into the crest, or else you lose a bunch of time. For some cars you have to shift, some cars you don't. Coming down to braking for turn 13, brake hard. Make sure you don't lock up your tires coming down into roller coaster. Turn 14, release the brake slightly just so you can turn in, or else you're gonna go into the grass. Turn 15, turn 16 coming up. Coast a little bit before slam on the brakes. Make sure, as you see, Plasma almost losing it, but still in control. And turn 17, and that's gonna be a lap at VIR. Hopefully Plasma is able to a lap next time around. But yeah, okay, you can see here, very interesting lap. And yeah, I know that you're not very familiar here, but if you're able to drive here, will you want to drive here?
Oh, I was sorry. I was just thinking about how terrifying this would be in real life to drive around this track, because there's so many just completely unsighted corners around here. It's really unbelievable how much trust you have to place in your markers, and how much you just have to kind of commit. It's going to be kind of almost a test of bravery here for our drivers as well, because like we saw on that lap with Plasma, if you get off into the grass, just dipping a one corner of a tire into it, especially under braking, it's so easy to just lose the car and just wash out wide from there. And worst case scenario, you spin into one of these tire barriers over here on the sides of the track, and that's your race over. But we're gonna stay on with Gayando here, rocking the Iron Dames Lamborghini, one of my favorite teams, if I may say my opinion on air here. This here is like, this section is where you get that really fast, right, left-hander, high-speed corner, and then plunge down into the oak tree here. Definitely, we're going to be watching for cars going out wide there. It's the fastest corner on the track, and it's going to test all of the downforce that they have, or might not have, if they're opting for more straight-line speed. I'm wondering if the Mercedes is going to be a pretty good car here, given that it's usually fairly good on the top speed, and there aren't too many of the it can clatter over those curbs a lot better than maybe some of its mid-engine cousins. What do you think?
Well, turn 10, 11, and 12, South Bend as well as Oak Tree, those sectors really test the skill of a driver, especially turn 11 and turn 12, where some drivers might prefer a two braking action where they brake right before turn 11, release it, going to turn 12 and slam on the brakes again. Where if you have some drivers maybe as skillful as the front runners, maybe akin to Plasma or maybe somewhere close like Fez, you might have a more safer approach where you just slam on the brakes, release them a little bit, trail it in to turn 12 to give yourself very good rotation on the exit. And I think some cars might get caught out in the different braking points, as you see some drivers getting impeded by drivers on track. But it's going to be very interesting to see how drivers go through. Front engine cars will benefit here through the stability, as they have to go through the very big curves at turn 10 as the car unsettles itself, and then have to be on the brakes. So the cars having front engine, as we see him slamming into a wall, that was Brea. So that's why turn 13 is very important, as you don't lock up the brakes there, because that's what happens when you go out wide here. If we're gonna have to take a look to see what happened, maybe some hardware failure, maybe some sort of, maybe just missed the marks entirely, as they're focusing on making sure they get they didn't brake. What happened there? They might have gone a bit too ambitious at that point.
That was strange. That almost looked like a hardware error at that point.
Yeah,
Like
definitely
maybe that the brake released in the middle of their braking there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Maybe it might have just be hardware area, or it might be just accidentally pressing the wrong pedal, because sometimes things might happen when you're a bit too relaxed. It is a very long straight. You might want to rest your foot a little bit. You might have slammed on the wrong pedal. Things might happen. So who knows? Things might have been a little bit differently. Plasma right now in the pits, but has set a 144.6. That is a very big gap to P2.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because last or 2 times out, at Road Atlanta, and also last time out to a certain extent, we had some really close lap times at the top where Klaus especially was able to get within a couple attempts of Plasma's time, which for those of you just joining us, Plasma is a professional race car driver, as much as any of us can be. Races for the Apex Racing Academy, does this to make money, so is extremely good at it. So it's kind of been a question for us here in the commentary booth, week in, week out. We kind of ask ourselves who can step up and get pace that is comparable or closer to the times that Plasma is able to do. And the answer kind of consistently has been Klaus for these last couple rounds, especially. Klaus has just been able to turn it on these last couple of races, and I'm really curious to see if they can get into those 44 times, or even within a couple times of Plasma, start to make it interesting towards the top.
Yeah, but here's the other problem that Klaus faces, is that they also have other drivers being in the way, such as Guyanda right now, just right behind them, close to less than a 10th behind them on the standings. And when you want to chase Plasma in front, but you have another different driver behind you just chasing you, you kind of just either have to fight for the car behind, or you have to find a way to tell the other driver, let's work together to catch up to Plasma. And most of the time, they don't really care, because they see that Plasma is already miles ahead. It's like, you know what? It's not achievable anyways. You might as well just fight for this car position, and that's not what Klaus wants, but that's what Klaus is going to get for the standings. But I think it's up to Klaus to be able to stretch the legs, get away from the driver behind, just so they could have any sort of slim chance in catching with Plasma this time around.
Yeah, that was absolutely my mentality as we're entering into our second half of qualifying here. About 10 minutes left to go, so our drivers are going to have to be conscious of making sure that they can get all of their laps in that they want to, because again, it is a fairly long lap around here, so you want to make sure that you have the fuel and the tires in it to be able to go in the last few minutes of this one and be able to get your times in. But definitely speaking to the mentality of being second place in a race where Plasma is in front of you, it definitely kind of shifts your mentality a little bit to see, there's really no way I can catch this guy. From me being in the cockpit in P2, when I was able to sort of snag that in Road Atlanta, it was just a matter of like, well, I'm just gonna I'm just going to fight for this position as hard as I can, because there's no point in going. There's no point in trying to save time and chase after the leader. So definitely, there's probably sort of similar conversation happening in Klaus's mind at this point. I'd be really interested to see what times Walkman can do here, based on the pace that we've seen from Walkman, especially throughout this championship. Has been consistently sort of in that fight for the P2, P3 positions. So Walkman looking just a little bit out of position here at the moment, but we'll see what kind of times come in as the session starts to wind down.
Well, yeah, I was gonna. You say that Walkman is like on P out of position, but if you noticed, P2 to P5 is within 2/10. It's gonna be interesting to see how the grid forms up at the end of the qualifying session, because despite seeing Walkman down in P5, if you see the timing sheets, it's so close that anyone just making a simple mistake might get to be able to snag P2 in front of Klaus. So it's definitely very interesting to see that how close the grid is right now within the top 5, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the race ends up, because at the end of the day, the race does not end at qualifying, definitely not here at VIR. So it's going to be up to drivers being able to think about how to fight, think about their strategies. And speaking of strategies, I'm sorry to bring this up to you, Kady, but given that you're the more veteran driver here in iRacing, what do you think the pit strategy is here this time around, given that you have a lot of long sweeping right-handers, maybe some left-handers, but no, you have a lot of long sweeping right-handers, but not much about long sweeping left-handers. What do you think the tire strategy is for this time around?
I mean, this one's going to be tough on the tires no matter what, because you have so many corners. You're making so many of those, and especially big direction changes one after the other, like you're seeing sort of in all these chicanes here, in all of this back and forth and back and forth. You see drivers oftentimes will slide out of there as we get a big slide, a bigger slide than the one that I was talking about, for one of our drivers in front. Thankfully was able to get out of the way. That was hearing that was Hakio Isametsu there on the exit leading on to this little complex here. But when you're talking about how much of a beating that the tires are taking around here, the other thing that you have to consider is that we can fill up the fuel tanks fairly tall here, about 65% of total capacity. I'm not really sure what the fuel numbers are looking like for a lot of our drivers, or how much they're planning on taking to make it to the end of this race. But if they have time in there, most of the time in a lot of these races, we see cars being able to have the time to take usually 2 tires, sometimes 4 tires if they're taking a lot of fuel. So it might be worth it for some of our drivers to take. I would probably focus on those left-hand tires like you were talking about. We got a lot of sweeping right-handers, like you were saying, but I would consider the rears as well, because you got a lot of really strong traction zones coming out onto the long straights here, and those are definitely going to be taking a beating as well. So there's really no way around it. Our drivers are going to be sliding around on overheated tires almost certainly at some point in this race, but it's just going to be a matter of what they can do, as Klaus has broken the 1 minute 44 second barrier, comes over the line with a 1:44.8. That is only 0.2 away from Plasma, and he still has about 6 minutes to challenge.
And 2 times is definitely not too much for them to catch up on, but that just means that the fight for P3 is now even stronger, given that now Zizor is the one that everyone wants to be in front of, given that you have Zizor, Gian, the Walkman, Tombstone, all fighting for pretty much the same position here if they are unable to answer to Klaus's 1:44.8. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how things shape up now that we have less than 6 minutes into this session. But yeah, very good lap from Klaus. But now, looking at the timing, still be uncertain if they're able to get an improvement. But it'll definitely be interesting to see how they do coming down into the back straight right now. The Lamborghini pretty strong right here compared to the rest of the grid. The AMG SL by Plasma, both very strong drivers here, and it kind of shows that it doesn't really matter if you're on the front engine car or rear engine car, as long as you're able to make sure that the car is stable. can definitely make it work. And it's definitely interesting to see here that as we are talking, this Corvette Walkman, even though it's not really a very popular car here in the iRacing community, as you can see that usually week by week the BOP is pretty weak on the car. Still very strong here coming in at P3. So it's definitely strong drivers here all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will be a provisional pole from Klaus. That is a provisional pole by less than 100th of a second. So just barely hanging on to the pole position by the end of this and is all over the road. I don't think he can believe that he put in that lap time. But he's going to go again, and we're going to see if Plasma has a response. That would be a massive shakeup for the start of this race, especially given that on this track in particular, P1 starts in a pretty advantageous position. It gets the inside for turn 1, so we'll see if that's going to affect anything here. If Klaus is going to be able to fight off Plasma in the opening stages of this race and could potentially set himself up for a win here, but we're still seeing times coming in from our sort of P3 to P6 sort of range here, which remains razor thin. Walkman has now put in a 44.8 of their own, so that is going to get them 2/10 clear of the more midfield battlers here in that top 10. So we're going to see here with 3 minutes left, it's going to be just a couple more laps for all of our drivers here that they're going to be able to get in. So Plasma doesn't have a lot of time here, and it's P3 now. That's Walkman for a 44.5 as the drivers continue, and then that's a 44.3 from Plasma. So one after the other, the purple laps are coming in. The track is absolutely ramping up here. The more rubbers that's getting laid down, the faster these drivers are able to go. And as they get into a rhythm here, it's going to be a frenetic last couple of minutes here. We're going to see if anybody can reply to that 44.3. That is a statement of lap time. It's 2/10 faster than anything that anyone else has been able to do.
Well, it is always a statement by Plasma, and at the end of the day, he's the one getting paid here to do this thing, so he has to make sure that he gets to keep his pay and also keep his position in the team. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see if anyone else is able to answer that, as we see Klaus here taking the first sector pretty good. But as you can see, the gap between P1 to last is 4 seconds apart. It's going to be very interesting to see how the guys in the front navigate through traffic. As you can see here, VIR, pretty narrow line, so it's going to be very interesting to see if they're able to navigate them well and efficiently with such long straights. And given that turn 5 all the way to turn 11, although you'll be pretty much flat out most of the entire sector, it's still a very undulating track. As such, you only get one line here. It's going to be interesting to see if drivers that have been waved the blue flag are going to concede for their positions or not during that sector, or will they unfortunately be stuck behind blue flag drivers and only get led by the back straight. So it's going to be very interesting to see any sort of strategy, any sort of traffic incidents that might happen today, as we see Walkman slowing down for Klaus might actually want to get a tow. That's why they slowed down as Klaus comes in from back straight and coming into sector 3. It's going to be interesting to see how, if they are going to be even allowed to draft the car in front, as I think Klaus is now just too far ahead and Walkman is just preparing themselves, getting themselves into the mental state to start their new flying lap. For the last time around, we only have a minute remaining, so this is going to be Walkman's last effort for a qualifying push. Maybe you can see an improvement for Klaus that did cross the line, and I don't think they did, as it might have just been validated at 144.6, so it's going to be very interesting to see if Walkman sets any green sectors here coming down into turn 1. Pretty strong on the power. Make sure that you don't lose the rear end coming down to turn 2 with a small kink. Brake before you go in, as you Klaus smoke there. Hopefully that can distract them. Going a little bit wide. Is that validated? Not sure, but we'll see here. Turn 4, 5, maybe still running for it as they're still gunning it. Oh, sliding it as they push the power down. Oh, saves it just right into the back straight. Hopefully not losing too much time, but we don't see much of an improvement on the timing sheet. Likely might be able to get more at turn 10 at South Bend, as sliding in the corner is very nice and tight. Make sure you don't go on the grass too much, they'll also lose a little bit of time. Coming up to turn 10, oh, wide end, oh, that's going to be a validated lap. There's going to be no more improvement for Walkman here in P2 and they just immediately park it. That is unfortunate, as well as Klaus having a second go at it right now as qualifying has ended with the checker flag has been waved. Very interesting to see if Klaus finishes this lap good, coming down to the back straight, making sure that they remember where to brake. Now's not really the time to think about braking a little bit late, because that's gonna mess up your entry down into turn 13, turn 14. If you're able to brake the car in time, sure, but now's the time to make sure your inputs are as smooth as possible coming to the crest. Oh, big send there by Klaus coming down into the crest. I think that's the thing with a lot of the more seasoned drivers. No, unfortunately, they're just going to come in for a pit practice, and that's certainly one thing that we don't talk about here. Pit entry practice. The entry here is very narrow and very tight, so it's going to be interesting to see if we get any penalties here, as sometimes you just see drivers get caught out, especially the newer drivers. They don't really practice their pit entry, so what happens is that you might just accidentally speed in the pit lane. That's definitely not something you want to have when you're racing, and when you're required to pit. That small little error is going to end up being a drive-through, end up being a stop and go, and that's going to be severely affecting your chances of winning here, or chances of getting points against your competitors here. As Zidor is the last driver on the track, coming down to turn 15, turn 16, turn 17. Any sort of improvements? We don't see them. We see a little bit of a green at sector 1. But then that will be the last driver coming into the pits for qualifying.
So that's our qualifying grid then. We had a couple of those, P3, P6 cars still on track, towards the end of that one, but all of them ended up either, not really being on flyers or, getting it invalidated in Walkman's case. But so that's going to be it, as we'll get the qualifying results to you in just a minute. But it's going to be another pole position for Plasma, who was looking a little bit on the ropes there towards the end of that session, but managed to pull out that 44.3 at just the right time. Nobody else was able to challenge that one, but Walkman got pretty close with that 44.5 there, lines up in P2, with Klaus completing the podium in P3. Then farther down is Zizor's with that 45-minute flat, the first of our 45-minute runners. As we get to the rest of our grid here. So that will be Gayando lining up alongside Tombstone on the third row there. Josiah Whiskey right behind, as well as Suzuka Nico Lopez there for rounding out our fourth row. Anton Burzbo, the new driver, coming in at P9. That's an impressive lap time there, about 1.5 seconds off of Plasma's best time. Then we have Fez lining up, rounding out our top 10, alongside Oily Rags down there in P11 with Pescetti in P12. That's going to be a close battle there for those sort of midfield points-paying positions. We've got some pretty tight lap times down there. F Spirits lining up alongside Hakio Izumetsu, so all of the RNG racing cars fairly grouped together here, so that might play into some of their race strategy going forward. Frey is behind the pair of them in P15, then Wolf and Foxdale in P16. Zeem rounds out P17. JPEG in P18 was not able to get a time in, as neither did David Young, who lines up last in P19.
Yeah, definitely very interesting. Yeah, definitely very interesting to see Josiah, as I was talking about earlier this time around. I think I didn't see them join in maybe a little bit later in practice. I thought they were not going to join this round, but I'm glad to see them here. Definitely the end of Road Atlanta was definitely not ideal for them, getting crashed out, having a small little incident at Road Atlanta at the last lap. But very, very glad to see that they're not too discouraged to be here. And it's going to be very interesting to see if Josiah is able to fight for the top 3, as the top 3 are very strong. As we see, you're almost time for grid, as the safety car might bring us all into a formation lap. And yeah, as the safety car rolls away for a full lap formation lap, Plasma's in front with Walkman now slowly behind. It's going to be a single file exit, but it's going to be a double file entire formation lap. It's going to be interesting to see how the drivers warm up. In iRacing, you don't really see much drivers warm up for the tires, because you want to make sure the tires are as cool as possible, but they still play a little bit of a factor. The brakes, you can hear them screech when they're cold, and they start to lose their screechiness as they get up the temperature. It's going to be interesting to see who is able to get the tires optimum for a restart, or some drivers might just need to maybe take a couple of laps to warm up the tires, and that might maybe lose them a couple of positions or two, and the cold tires might catch out some of the newer drivers that are unfamiliar with cold tire characteristics. That might cause some incidents, hopefully not. But yeah, as we're coming down to the track, you can see how narrow it is, just going too wide here through most of the corners. You don't even fit much cars here, not like certain tracks where you can put 3 cars here, as you see here. Coming down into turn 4, turn 5, and turn 6, it's like you have to take the curves just to make sure you don't hit each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how these drivers fight coming down for turn 1.
I love Klaus's position here actually in P3. I think I would prefer to be P3 on this track than P2, which kind of sounds counterintuitive, but when you're taking a look at this grid here, Klaus is going to have the inside corner here against Walkman in the event that Walkman gets just a little bit of a bad start, as usual for iRacing starts. The leader controls when the race actually starts. So we'll see Plasma leading them out of the final corner, and then at a time of Plasma's choosing, he will put down the accelerator, and that will be the start of the race. But if Klaus's reaction time here is better than Walkman's, it could actually be a fairly easy position at the start, or at least a good chance at fighting into the horseshoe there. As you can see, Klaus here already seems to be making their intentions clear towards Walkman here. This is probably going to be Klaus's best opportunity, at least for the start here. So I would expect at least a sniff of a lunge, especially if Klaus is able to get off to a better start here.
Well, it definitely has to be hinging on top of having a good start. But if not, Walkman can definitely just slip into the back of Plasma and just shut the door on Klaus to make sure that doesn't happen. But how long will Walkman be able to hold on to Klaus? At the end of the day, the grid is going to be very close, and with how narrow this track is, things will happen. Drivers might try to take opportunities to break a little bit later than the car in front, and when everyone breaks a little bit later, things might happen. So hopefully nothing serious might happen. At the end of the day, we do have fast repairs here for the drivers to at least get themselves back up and running, but it's still a little bit of a time loss, and you definitely do not want that to happen, as we see drivers coming out into turn 16, turn 17, as the pit car is going to get into the pits, and it's going to be up to Plasma to start the grid. It's going to be very intense. I think we just have to look forward to the grid start is going to happen, and Plasma lining up the entire grid. When is he going to go, or is he going to wait for the green lights? As we see slowly everyone's inching forward, drivers coming down just to see what happens to the grid in front. You can see as we are green flag. Oh, and there he goes. Plasma already going away, as we predicted Walkman's going to close the door on Klaus. Both of them fighting for turn 1, but everything's pretty stable here from the front to the grid back. Oh, as we see Zizor trying to have a sniff at Walkman. No, that's Klaus at P4, but Klaus having a better exit. Now Zizor has to contend with P4, but still has a lot of drivers behind to fight for. As you see here, cars going side by side here into turn 3, sorry. Anton's fighting with Daniel, with Inigo Lopez, all side by side. Oh, as that Mustang Spirit getting caught out, but trying to defend for that position. Oh, as you see here, drivers going sideways. Oh, please don't hit. Saves it.
That's another unfortunate incident there for Fezfox, who I think at least the last couple of races has had quite rotten luck, as I'm sure we'll probably go back to the replay there. Walkman is bumper to bumper nearly going into Oak Tree here with Plasma, is extremely close, and in fact almost bumps into Plasma there, and Klaus isn't too much farther behind either. It's going to be a bit of a squiggly exit there from Walkman, but they're going to be lining up here. Klaus is going to have a pretty decent look here, perhaps, if the draft is enough. We go over the crest of the hill here. We're going into the braking zone, and Klaus is probably going to be just a little bit too far back here for this one. Is going to just slot in, and we're through kind of this single file section here once again, where there's not really going to be much of an opportunity until we get back down the hill, and we're heading over to lap 2.
Yeah, but as you can see here, I think Klaus's idea might be a good idea, because as you see here, there is already a separation between the groups, as the top 3 are on their own group, and Cesar is basically holding everyone else back. if Klaus were to be able to fight with Walkman, they might have slowed down the pack. Plasma would have gone a bigger lead, and then they would have been able to stay between the pack behind. So I think it's a good idea that Klaus just slot in behind Walkman, have the front grid just separate in front. So at least when they are fighting later on in the session, they'll have at least a lot of leeway to fight, so that they don't lose too much time to go behind.
Exactly, and Plasma's not running away here either. Walkman is keeping it, and in fact is actually within 1.5 tenths now, so it's going to be really close between them. As we take a look at Oily Rags here in P9, right behind Versbo here. Oily Rags up 2 places from where they started, so pretty good drive so far. Was able to take advantage of that incident with Fesfox there, and was able to jump up a couple positions. So it's going to be really close here between them as we are continuing to look at the intervals between our top drivers here, and it continues to be very close at the top of the table and actually throughout the field. That draft doing a lot to keep the cars bunched up, as it's going to be another go down the longest straight on this track, and Walkman is just about the same distance behind that Klaus was behind Walkman on the last lap. So it's going to be single file for them once again on this lap, as we are going back to the incident there between Fesfox and this car up in front. Let's have Spirit up there. So it's going to be coming through this complex here. It goes a little bit wide, does Fesfox, and the Mustang, I think, might have just been a bit of a lunge there. We'll see it from the TV camera here in just a second, but that to me looked like it was probably a dive from the car behind that Fez wasn't expecting. So from the Mustang there. So yeah, just exactly it. Just was side by side. Just maybe didn't know that a car was there, or thought that they would slot in behind through that particular section of the track. As we get back to our top 3 battle here, which is continuing to be incredibly close throughout these last couple of laps, and I think the draft is really helping Walkman here.
Yeah, definitely helping the drivers in the draft, Plasma in front. But as you can see here, it's going to be a fight between which car is able to save the tires a bit more here. As we see, Plasma might be using a bit more tire, pushing a bit harder to make sure that they stay in front, but the drivers behind are definitely going to benefit from a bigger toe coming down the straight. So it's going to be beneficial as we see Plasma squabbling a little bit for turn 11 and turn 12. It's going to be, as we see Walkman as well going a bit wide, as everyone pushing pretty hard on these on the stint to make sure they stay in front with Plasma. But yeah, I was going to say, they're going to have an advantage in terms of fuel saving that might benefit them in the pit lane, maybe save a couple of seconds in terms of not using that much fuel. But as you see here, Plasma still, they still have to push pretty hard to make sure that they stay with Plasma. And at the end of the day, it might not benefit, it might not show any difference because of how much they have to put in effort just to stay in front. But Plasma definitely showing the world that they are capable of staying in front, and staying in front they do. But looking at this, we see that Aspirit has, as we were fighting just then, we see that Fastfox and Aspirit has been changing positions now and then, but now Aspirit has, as we see some action behind, as we see maybe some issues in the replay, as we did see some action. Aspirit coming down, fighting for Fez. Let's see here what has Fez done. Side by side coming down to turn 7, turn 8. Not the most ideal place to have an overtake, but Fez just let them by just to make sure they are able to safely come across. Yeah, but right now Fez is in front of Aspirit, so definitely has taken the position back. But it's gonna be interesting to see what has happened with Aspirit. Yeah, Aspirit running wide. So definitely I think we're gonna see Aspirit as well as Fez fighting for positions here and there, just to get back to their previous position. So it's going to be a very interesting battle to see at the back and to take a look into. As we see Kady here, maybe losing it coming down here, but Aspirit takes no waiting and just takes the opportunity to overtake Aspirit down into complex area later.
I think what keeps happening here is that a lot of these drivers coming onto this, sort of quasi straight here. It's anything but straight with all of the twists and turns, but it is, you're flat out throughout all of it, and just kind of getting onto there probably just squeeze the throttle a little bit too much. Yeah, it's a fairly stable car through there, and then onto here. Yeah, so it was actually a full 360 spin around and a tap of the wall, so you can see the damage there on the left fender there of Paschetti, so that might hamper their straight line speed for the rest of this race, or at least until they're able to get into the pits and fix that with fast repair. But didn't look bad enough that they would have to think about pitting right now just to fix it. Can probably still continue in this one, but is probably just going to be a little bit hampered there with the loss of that little aerodynamic part there.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate for Paschetti. It's going to be annoying, especially with how long the straights are here. Especially, even though we don't see 3 straights, technically, turn 5 to turn 9 is definitely considered a straight to us. And with that hampered front end, it's going to be annoying for them until they get it repaired, as you said. But it's still not the end of the race. They're still able to repair it and get it back on the track. They just need to make sure that they burn enough fuel for to get back into the pits as soon as possible, just so they don't lose much time in the pit stop. But for now, as you see a fast swap try to make a move on Wolfen, I think that move has stuck. Maybe Wolfen just let them by just because they know that it's not their fight to be fighting with. But a little bit sketchy down into turn 7, 8, and 9. It's going to be interesting to see how fast catches up to back into their qualifying position. But now, if you see here, Faz already 4 positions behind compared to their 8 position at the start. So it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes for him to. Wolfen just a bit slow. I think they're just trying to slow down for Faz, but maybe they have some issues they can let him exit. But glad that Faz is able to overtake them pretty easily there. And yeah, it's gonna be a long fight for Faz just to get back to the original position. Something tells me that looks a little bit awfully familiar compared to last round. But yeah, it's gonna be. I think we're gonna see Fez a lot this time around.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good race for Fez so far. Just capitalizing on we've seen several errors actually coming out onto that straight there. You have to just be so careful on the throttle, and the drivers that are able to continue to take positions off the drivers that aren't. As the gap between Walkman and Plasma has opened up just slightly. It's not really an open gap. It's a matter of previously Walkman was right on the bumper of Plasma there and is now just a little bit slightly behind. But our top 3 have spaced out a little bit, but are absolutely all still within striking distance of each other. And I really do have to like both Klaus and Guayando's position here as we cut to this battle here of Guyanda fighting Zezors for P5. I like the opportunity to fuel save here behind these other cars, where you have to punch through less of the air, and you also get to lift and coast a little bit coming into the braking zone. So for both Guayando and Klaus, they're probably going to be able to just start to save a little bit of fuel here, and that's really the name of the game when you're talking about when you're talking about reducing the time of your pit stop to an absolute minimum. As Freya is off the road, that is, I think, right at the exit of the oak tree there, and that's going to be a really hard place to rejoin, but is going to lose a couple positions there, is going to rejoin. We're going to have a look here, so it looks like there might have been another car involved, or maybe just spun on their own, as we're going to see. So comes through the second part of Oak Tree there.
No.
Yeah, it just stands on the throttle a little bit too much there, gets a squiggle, overcorrects, and then is next thing you know, they're in the wall, which definitely with that big engine on the back of the Porsche acting like a pendulum there, extremely easy to do. Is that's going to be another car off. That's Fez off into a part of the track that I can't even tell where they are, and they're going to teleport back to the pits. That's a tow from Fez, so that's going to be pretty much their race over, as it was very close actually to the pit lane. Must have had a big impact for that to be a tow, because they were right at the pit lane entrance here. Actually didn't go off that much, so maybe just decided to call it quits there, but that's going to be Fez out of the race, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's definitely a track where it might just frustrate some people because of how a little bit of mistake and that is gonna get you a lot of positions lost here. So it's unfortunate that Fast had to retire there, but it's understandable that given that they didn't really have the best start in the race, this race. So they might have just said, you know what, let's call it quits tonight. I'm not having the best time around. There's a couple of mistakes here and there. Might as well have a more relaxed night than fighting for positions here in the track.
I think we've all been there. As you know, this two-way battle between Zizos and Guyana here for P4 is turning into a five-way battle as Tombstone in P6, who was one of the stars of our last round in Ashuslaman, was able to get up into the very high podium positions, and in fact was able to fight for P3 with RK last time out. Wasn't able to get that position in the end, but was very competitive. So we're looking to see some fireworks here from Tombstone in this race, as well as the two pink Lamborghinis have converged on each other on the track, and we'll see which one of these drivers is going to have the advantage here. Guayando has consistently looked a little bit faster to me, as it's a bit of a wide moment there from Tombstone. So Tombstone is pushing at this point to stay with this group. We've seen,
Yeah, and
I think, so far.
Wait. Yeah, as you see here, yeah, Aspire has just passed Zim, slowly getting their way up there. Currently now Aspire finally has a position gain from their qualifying time, so it's definitely nice to see them on the positive. So glad to see that they are here. Maybe we'll take a look at the pass in a bit. Oh, as we see here, maybe Zim has had an issue, or maybe that's just a very big, yeah, that's a very big pace difference here as Aspire just has the better run here. Oh, where has Zim go? That definitely has scared Aspire, but yeah, very solid run down into turn 1. Definitely an easy overtake. It's gonna be up from here at this point, so it's gonna be interesting to see how they end up this time around. But as you were saying about the fight between Gyando as well as Tombstone, as you can see here as well, Josiah at the back just slowly, quietly, just observing, just in case anything happens between the three of them, because if anything does happen, Josiah is going to be there to gladly just take the position from them, and they definitely do not want that. I think Tombstone knows that as well, so they definitely have to think about not pushing it too hard as they see all the cars here going a little bit off-white. Definitely don't want to do that when you're not in control, but if you're in control, it's gonna be a bit alright, as you see here. Gap still closing in as they see both cars in front fighting side by side. Now side by side into turn 1 is Gyando as well as Zizor fighting position. Hopefully no incidents happen here. Coming down to small cane before turn 2 and turn 3. Who will be the better one as Zizor's on the inside, both giving position. Who are going, oh, as you see Zizor getting caught out, but the door has been closed on Tombstone, but Josiah now behind as both get compromised onto Dex into turn 5 and turn 6. Now single file as we see Gyando has just made the move and is now in P4.
What an overtake from Gyando there around the outside of that corner. That was actually, to be able to hold it around there, and in fact, was able to just get the higher speed, taking that sort of outside line, and was able to just sweep around there. That was a move that looked like it was in the making for quite a while here for the last couple of laps, as Josiah now is very, very close behind Tombstone. As you said, all 4 of these cars are going to sort of stay line astern with each other going into this long straight here. They're all going to pick up that slipstream off each other, and we'll see if Caesar's going to be able to keep up with Gyando, or if Gyando is going to be able to run away with it now that they have been sort of released. We've seen, I think, slightly better pace from Gyando this weekend than Zizor's so far in this little battle here. So she has already pulled out about the 3/4 of a second gap. So it's going to be, and especially with Tombstone being so close, if there's going to be able to take a look down into the horseshoe, is probably going to be a little bit too far back now for a repeat there. But Tombstone probably was at least hoping for.
Oh my God.
That was a sniff there. That was a sniff down the inside, but was ultimately, just there was nothing was going to really happen there. It was just a little bit too far back. But this battle does look like it's going to be heating up here in the next couple of laps. I think Tombstone was really eager to try to get a position from all that fighting. but was just just had the door shut into this corner. In fact, heading on to this straight here. So we'll see if Tombstone can continue to get close.
Yeah, and I think it really shows that the lighter cars like the Lamborghini are slightly benefiting on this track given how much undulation there is. It's gonna be a very big stress on the BMW with the heavier the tires on the BMW with the heavier car. So I think Zizor might have a little bit of a struggle trying to fight for positions longer, especially if you see the two smaller cars here, the AMG as well as the Lamborghini as Tombstone goes a little bit too wide. You got to be careful here. There's only 25 access into the points you can get before you get maybe a penalty, a drive-through, maybe a disqualification. I think that's up to the stewards' point of view to see what happens. But yeah, definitely have to be careful there. But as you can hear, going a little bit wide, Josiah already at the back of Tombstone. So Tombstone needs to really think about, as much as they want to overtake Zizors, to not make too much mistakes, or else Josiah's just going to be there and take that position, and it's going to be a fight that Josiah might want to claim victory again with Zizors, given the incidents at Road Atlanta. So definitely don't want that to happen for Tombstone. If they're able to keep it on track, they might have a move on Zizor, but for now, it's gonna be maintaining the position for maybe a couple more laps until things sort themselves out.
I think one thing also to keep in mind is that we are less than 20 minutes into an hour-long race. So, the more fighting that these guys do, if they lose time off of each other, it's going to, impact their race overall and sort of the upper bounds of what they can achieve here. Now, Gaido at this point, about almost 9 seconds adrift from the podium here. So I think with all of that fighting, any hopes that Gaido might have had for a podium have been dashed, as that's going to be very, very close from Tombstone here, practically pushing Zizors down this section here as they're heading into that high speed that goes into the Oak Tree corner. And that's going to be Zizors in front, no look here, as that's going to be another slow moment from F-Spirit there. That's going to be Paliku'i overtaking F-Spirit there at the start of this straight here. We'll take a quick look at that on the replay as we see F-Spirit circulating towards the end of the lap, this looks like, and just coming out of the final corner here. Yep, that's very wide onto the grass there in the last bit of that corner complex there, and you are foot flat to the floor in these cars throughout that entire corner, but you really have to make sure you get the entry right, because that's going to affect if you overshoot that curb there, you're going to end up on the grass just like F-Spirit was. That's going to be just another little moment there, and is wide of most of these apexes. So definitely the grass clinging onto those tires, maybe the off-track moment upsetting F-Spirit's rhythm a little bit, and that is a very, very slidey Mustang.
Yeah, I think F-Spirit's struggling really hard on what has on the car. The Mustang is definitely not an easy car to tame. So, given that I drive the Mustang here, and it was definitely not the easiest thing, as you see here, the car just sliding across the track here. It's definitely a characteristic that I've seen, as the rejoin was a little bit sketchy for them. But yeah, the Mustang itself, a little bit unfavorable, not the favorites this time around in the league, but it's definitely a weird car to tame, given that especially from my experience here for the Mustang, you kind of have to squat the car really neutrally here and make sure they get enough downforce. Although the long straights here might ask you to lower your wing just to make sure you get that little bit of top end, I found that, as you can see here, if your car's a bit too unstable, as F-Spirit goes a bit wide here, it's going to be a very long and hard struggle for F-Spirit to keep it on track, and that's going to hinder their ability to just climb the grid, and they have to really sort themselves out and make sure that they shake off any sort of frustrations that they have in the cockpit, make sure that they wake themselves up. You know what, let's settle down, get rid of all these mistakes just so they can actually start climbing the grid again. If not, they might just fall down back and back and back, and it's just going to increase the frustrations all over again.
Right, and that's part of what we talk about when we talk about the way that iRacing models tires, is that once those tires heat up and they get a big slide, that's a bit of a wiggle there from Walkman. That could be very close for Klaus here heading into turn 1. So Klaus on the outside, Walkman able to defend on the inside as they go through the horseshoe. That was a very close moment. Klaus is looking for a switchback, but just a little bit too much of an open corner there to really execute that that switchback. So Klaus is going to have to stay behind and look for another mistake from Walkman, but they're beginning to pile up as these two are now a little bit adrift to Plasmas. That's going to be Tombstone just taking a look around the outside of Zizor's there. Zizor's wide. They're going to be side by side heading into this corner complex here, and that is going to be Tombstone up into P5. And Zizor's might even lose a position to Josiah here, coming down the straight here. It's going to be a really good opportunity here, as that was a bit too much curb from Josiah, so that might have dashed their chances of getting up into P6, but Zizor's is going to hang on to that position, and that looked like it was just a bit of a mistake there from Zizor's potentially, as we will take a look at that on our replay.
Yeah, definitely maybe side by side already coming to turn 2. That has definitely maybe compromised their ability to focus on that corner. These are definitely a little bit too greedy on the brakes here just to defend for that position, and Tombstone takes advantage of it. As well as Josiah even tried to have a look, but unfortunately Zizor knows to not make it happen and just closes the door on them. Definitely don't want to push Zizor too much, Josiah, since Road Atlanta, but you have to make the move or else you lose the position, and Zizor definitely is the cork in the ball in this grid. For now, definitely maybe the tires as well as the weight of the car taking its toll. We are 22 minutes in, and it's time that some of these tires might be giving up. It just might have a good run here into turn 1. Will that happen? We're not sure, as Kady comes down side by side next to Zim and does make the move for at the back straight. Zim might be a bit slowed down on power, or maybe just letting them by at this point just to make sure that they are able to survive this grid. As you can see here, things might just naturally happen even without a strong fight. So it's just best to just maintain your survivability on this grid, and things might just give you positions might just come your way, given that even though Zim has last Kady by, they're still 4 positions up from the qualifying time.
And we see David Young in the pit lane now as well. Could be the first of our drivers to pit, and that looks like it's going to be a normal pit stop and not simply for damage purposes. And interestingly, it looks like David there with the car on the hydraulic jacks there. Looks like David Young is going to take tires in addition to the fuel. So we'll see what David's times look like. Don't know exactly which tires were taken, whether it was one particular side or just the fronts or just the rears, or potentially even all 4. But it looked like the tire switch got done before the fuel was finished, which usually means that as long as they took a pretty reasonable amount of fuel, they would probably only have time to take 2 tires there rather than 4. We're going to take a look now at Pascady's pass there on Zim as we're going out there, and it looked like it was just better traction and better exit from Pascady here. Was able to get around, and yeah, like you said, Zim just feathering the throttle out a little bit there, just knowing that Pascady had the momentum to be able to get around and didn't want to fight for it too much. Wanted to get a little bit of that slipstream, because F-Spirit is not too far behind them, about at this point, probably actually quite a bit farther behind, as maybe perhaps another incident from F-Spirit. It might have been another off for them there. As we take a look back at Josiah, who is still chasing Zizos for this P6, and these two have been really, really close on pace so far throughout, as they get very close to each other in the braking zone, sort of constant teaming together there. But Josiah's been able to really keep up with this group, and in fact with Zizors for quite a while now, but at this point Zizors is about 8-9 of a second adrift of Tombstone here, so it looks like Tombstone has just been able to pull out that little bit of extra pace lap over lap, and has been able to separate themselves from this 2-car group behind, which is going to be really important to be able to deny that slipstream to these cars. And once that happens, the pace should be able to, if it's just a fight on pure pace, Tombstone should be able to run away with it, especially if these two start fighting.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about the difference between Zizor and Josiah, is that Josiah is extremely good on the brakes, but unfortunately with Zizor just right in front of him, there's not much anywhere Josiah can go, even though they have the better brakes. Zizor being able to hold on to Josiah on the braking zone allows them to just dictate when they accelerate, and with that advantage. You can see that Zizor just pulls away on the straights as we see the BMW go a little bit wide on turn 17. But yeah, if the car is there and given the BMW is so big, there's nothing much Josiah can do other than, you know, wait for a good opportunity, maybe pressure him the same way that Tombstone has been able to do to get by. Maybe just go side by side, because Zizor just might not be familiar with breaking at alternate lines, and that has caused them to maybe go out a little bit wide, go out a little bit, breaking a bit too late. And I think Josiah needs to acknowledge that that's how you get past Zizor here. And if they're able to do it right, maybe they're able to make a move. But for now, they can't really just stay behind and break later. That's what I'm seeing here.
Taking a look back at the top, Klaus has actually been separated quite a bit. That looks like another off. That's from David Young. So the first hitter of our race off the track there, and is able to file back on. Didn't affect their position at all, but just was able to just lost a little bit more time to the rest of the group. Looking back up our table, Klaus is now 4 seconds back from Walkman when they were previously quite close together, and on the last lap it looks like Klaus was a full 3 seconds slower than Walkman on that lap, so pretty atypical. So there might have been an off-track moment there for Klaus, we're not sure, but that's going to make Klaus's job all that much harder, as they're going to have to push quite significantly, as that's going to be side by side. It's Zizor's who's going to be later on the brakes, so Josiah almost looked like Josiah backed out of it a little bit, maybe thought better of that move. It was going to be, if it was going to be a lunge, it was going to be a pretty significant lunge, so that's going to be these cars in the same order that they have been, but again, going to be very, very close is Josiah, just pushing Zizor's along the straight here. Zizor's doesn't want to give them the inside line, so they're going to have to go to the outside. They're not quite going to be side by side. They're going to be a little bit side by side, a little bit of overlap heading into the braking zone. There's going to be no chance there for Josiah on the outside. And the more that Zizor's has to keep defending these little jabs here, the more that Tombstone is able to run away. The gap now opened up to 1.3.
Yeah, I think Zizor has learned from Tombstone that you do not want to give them the inside line. That has definitely compromised them into turn 2 and turn 3, and I think Zizor knows that. That's why they've been defending the inside line pretty strongly. And because of this, as you can see, the gap for Anton has been closing in. They definitely have to sort themselves out. If not, Zizor is going to have to fall back and fight for Anton again. And that if they fight for another position, that might not be beneficial for them in the long run. They are already 2 positions down, and Josiah has actually not moved on the grid itself. Josiah will definitely want to get the position, but Zizor might have to weigh their chances of, maybe get Josiah the position just so they don't have to fight for Anton again, or they're just going to defend valiantly for P5. Actually, no, that's P6, and it's really up to them. Right now, we're closing in on the 30-minute mark. Pit stops are going to happen. Josiah might want to just actually pit in. If you pit in early, you don't have Zizor in front of them, you might not have traffic, hopefully, and you might be able to just have a good run and pit them on the pit lane. I think that's maybe a strategy to go by, but you have to be careful here. Once you get into the pit lane and when you exit, if you are in the middle of the front pack, you might have to let them by, and that's going to be a few seconds lost if you get between them though. So it's going to be really up to Josiah to maybe think a few steps ahead compared to Zizor. Oh, as they say, see an opportunity here coming down into turn into the front straight. Is that move able to stick though? I think they still have a gap here, and just Zizor just being precautiously defending, but they are going side by side into the horseshoe. But Zizor just having the inside line covered, and if they are able to be patient, as you can see here, Josiah is unable to answer and just fouls back. Oh, maybe have a look. No, still behind Zizor as Josiah is getting more and more aggressive against trying to make an overtake. Zizor might have to just force the door closed just to remind Josiah that they have the position and stay behind them for a moment.
I think Josiah has kind of almost gotten into Zizor's head now at this point, is kind of what it seems like. Like they've been this close for this long, and this would be absolutely suicidal if Josiah was to try to send a move through this particular section, but they are going to be extremely close once again, and Zizor's kind of driving in their rear mirrors now, and really just, you know, making their intentions extremely clear, you know, defending very, very, you know, obviously into a lot of these corners. So it does definitely look very pressured. And meanwhile, here to join the party is Anton, finally has caught up with all of that fighting throughout the first sector. So Anton now just about as close to Josiah as Josiah is to Caesars, and we've got a 3-car battle now again for P6. This has been one of the most hotly contested positions of this race so far, and the action is going to continue as Josiah once again is just continues to pull up further and further in these technical sessions, and Josiah looking like they have the pace now, but just has not been able to convert that into a good run and into an overtake. But the time is kind of running out for them now, because the more that they mess with this, it's going to give Anton more and more of a look, as Josiah is now flashing Zizors, trying to get around as fast as they can. That's going to be a dive to the inside. That was a little juke there from Josiah. It might be a little bit of a tap there on the apex, but they're going to continue to go side by side. They're going to be going through the left-hander here that Zizors is going to have the inside for, and that Josiah is going to have to, and that's going to be a big switchback from Zizors. What a move. That was an unbelievably amazing sequence from both of these drivers, giving themselves space, and that was an absolutely manufactured to perfection overtake from Josiah, getting Zizors offline. We will be watching that one again, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely interesting to see how Josiah is able to play into the hell of Zizor. And I mean, to be fair, if I was Zizor, I would want to push Josiah back into Anton as well, but it's amazingly put. As I actually advised Zizor before, playing the mind game, just tell the car in front that you're there, especially when the spoiler just yells at you that you have a car inside. Definitely scares you, and definitely has, you know, take advantage of that what he just saw as well with Tombstone. Given that you see that just now with Tombstone as well, Zizor being a little bit greedy always at turn 2 when they are side by side, will always break late. I think Josiah notices it, breaks early just to catch Zizor off guard, and just like that, Zizor has overshot it and definitely has got in position for Josiah. And I think that's going to be Josiah free into open, no traffic in front of them, and it's going to be Josiah just holding in front. Unfortunately for Zizors, maybe the car is starting to give way with his tire wear. He's starting to pull back a bit, but no doubt as they come into the pits, as well as Anton as well, both coming into the pits. I was going to say, Giando's in the pits as well. Pretty early pits, but we are past the 30-minute mark, so you'll definitely see cars start to file in. Those that have taken full tank of fuel might come in a bit later on, but those that have timed their pit stops just right will be about the time where you start to run out of fuel, and that's when you start to pit in, as we see Plasma just in the wind 3 seconds behind in front of Walkman. At this point, he doesn't even need to worry. They could just fuel save. They could do whatever they want. It won't be a problem for them as they cruise easily into turn 10 and turn 11. I think this is a common scene for us for Plasma, and I think for them, it's just extra tack time for them.
Well, it's not over yet. I mean, Walkman is still about 3 seconds back. That's, you know, if Plasma, you know, overshoots his pit lane, if he, you know, gets off track for a couple seconds, you know, gets tangled up with traffic, especially in the more unlucky parts of this track, it could definitely split the other way, as that's going to be another car off track. It looks like the Porsche of David Young once again getting off track there, and that's going to trip up Oily Rags slightly, but Oily Rags is able to get around, and the woes continue for David Young. But focusing back on sort of the battle in the pit lane here, Anton now is about, they literally came into the pit lane maybe, you know, 0.5 of a second apart, and Anton is about a little over 2 seconds away from Zizors. So Zizors, they're able to get a very fast pit stop. Looks like one of the faster pit stops that we've had so far, is that's going to be Josiah in the pit lane. So this is going to be something that we're really going to be taking a look at. We're going to be taking a look at Josiah and where Josiah is able to come out in relation to Zizors. So Zizors down in P9 should be sort of around Sector 2, Sector 3 at this point. It's a pretty long pit lane. It's a pretty long time stationary to pit. So definitely these cars could come together, and if Zizors has been able to get the tires fired up, if they took new tires. It could be a big advantage, you know, throughout the out lap for Josiah. As Josiah's on the pit exit now, so it doesn't look like there's going to be too much of a threat here from Zizors as Josiah filters back in, and yep, that's going to be Zizors behind by, it's probably going to settle down to about 3 seconds back. So
Yeah,
these
I think.
breaking.
Sorry. I was gonna say that given the gap between Anton and Zizor, I think Anton has taken new tires. That's gonna be very interesting to see how the pace might end up at the end of the race compared to what Zizor has done. Zizor might have not taken any tires, or maybe I've just taken the 2 tires that they're able to get for this race, for the pit stop, given the length of it. But yeah, Josiah definitely did not take any tires just to make sure that they stay in front of Zizor, as Zizor goes a bit too ambitious on the curb there, trying to go a little bit of rallycross right on this track. I don't think there is a rallycross track here, so definitely want to keep it on track. So yeah, ooh. Yeah, but sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, sorry. I was gonna say that Anton's getting held up by the Bluey car. Just right behind there is gonna be Anton's definitely not gonna be happy with that, as they just got past here into turn 10 and turn 11. Ooh, now Walkman and Klaus P2 and P3. Oh. Yeah, I see
so this
here
is going
that,
to be so interesting.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see here. I was gonna say that Klaus, I think he might have just forgot to uncheck his tires because he's in the pit lane a bit longer. He might have actually swapped tires. I think Klaus might not like that, but they might also think that the extra grip might benefit them in the future. So who knows? We'll have to see how the race ends, given that the Huracan's a little bit of a weak, older car compared to the Corvette. Maybe they have a bit stronger tire wear, but who knows? I'm not too familiar with this car. Maybe you will know, Kady?
Well, Klaus, you could see sort of with the animation there, Klaus, the car sort of came off of the hydraulic jacks and then immediately sped off. So that tells me that Klaus has changed all 4 tires, whether they meant to or not, and the tires were still going on after the fueling had completed. Normally, in these cars, you're able to fuel and change the tires simultaneously, but if the tire change time, as Plasma now enters the pit lane, probably won't be contested by anyone on the exit here, just might end up in a little bit of traffic in the worst case scenario. But yeah, definitely to me that says that Klaus went quite a bit longer on the pit stop than Walkman did, whether intended or not. But those 4 brand new tires are going to be hopefully broken in quite quickly around here, so that Klaus can get to the task of getting this gap down, because they're now staring at a 12-second gap to Walkman, whereas they, as you were seeing in the pit lane, they nearly entered, you know, one after the other.
That was a very fast pit for Plasma, 43 seconds into the pit lane. But you can see here, when you do select just 2 tires, when you do the pit lane, your car will come down before the end of the pit stop. But for Klaus, I think they might have just forgot to take off tire changes for the pit stop, and I think they might be not happy that they basically threw away P2, but things might change. They might, because they have the newer tires here, they're able to push harder. And if they have the fuel for it, why not? But at the end of the day, they definitely now have a very big gap that they previously don't have. And I think that they're not happy. They might not be happy that things have happened this way.
We've got our fastest laps up on the screen at this point. So Plasma holding it down with 44.7. That's faster than anyone else, I believe, was able to do in qualifying. So, or sorry, I believe 2/10 slower than anyone else was able to do in qualifying. But still, you know, holds our fastest race lap. Walkman and Klaus here. Klaus has actually been a little bit faster on that fastest lap than Walkman has. So at the top end of the times, Klaus has been a little bit faster, but you know, just those couple mistakes that we've seen, whether you know in the pit lane or on track, have just caused them to drift apart. Despite that, so I'm optimistic. From the optimistic view, I would say that those 4 tires are going to be able to cut into Walkman's gap significantly, and we will see how that ends up shaping up. But Tombstone back there, Tombstone, Goyando, and Josiah all turning in, extremely similar fastest laps here, with some of them a little bit slower, some of them a little bit faster. So it just goes to show how close the pace gap is throughout our field today. And although we have sort of at the end of the pit cycle here, as everybody, we can see how long everybody took in the pit lane. So Plasma once again turning in our fastest stop at an 18.1, and Tombstone with a very impressive 18.5. That's time stationary, so that doesn't include the time needed to enter or exit the pit lane. But you can see Klaus as well. Actually did not have that much slower of a total pit time compared to Walkman. So I almost wonder if there was maybe some other incident on track that caused that, because if they were to have entered the pit lane right around that at a similar time to each other, you would think that they would be just about 3 or 4 or 5 seconds apart.
Yeah, definitely interesting to see what might have happened before that, or maybe we just kind of didn't realize that the gap was that far apart already at that point, and it kind of took us to a surprise, because we were expecting a fight for P2 and P3, and because of how far the gap has become, we might have not noticed it. And maybe what Klaus did just pit in at the regular time, but we just caught him at the as we see Walkman here going a little bit sliding, going a bit wide, but luckily saved it. But I was gonna say Klaus might have just pit in normally, and to us in the commentary booth, it might have just looked a bit strange and looked a bit too long. But yeah, glad to see that they have a relatively fast pit stop. I think Klaus might want to catch up, and if they actually did change all the tires, it's gonna be very nice to see if they're able to catch Walkman up here in P2 as the time ticks. We have about 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes remaining to the end of the session. For us drivers, 20 minutes might not seem a lot, but in the commentary booth, 20 minutes, we might see a lot of things happening within the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still sort of that P5, P6, P7 battle to resolve as we take a look at Walkman continuing to circulate here. We still don't quite know what's going to happen in that battle. They all put in fairly similar pit times. They've been putting in similar lap times, so likeliest scenario at this point is that they finish the way that they are now. But Anton is putting in some pretty good times, and it is taking a little bit of time out of Zizors, is continuing to do that over the last couple of laps. So we'll see if that fight ends up heating up any as we enter into the closing stages of this one. But yeah, it looks like things have sort of settled out here. We got a lot of our fighting out of the way towards the beginning of this race, as we could see the beautiful sunset here at Virginia, and the headlights are coming on.
Yeah, as we see the sunset here as well, but you can see here the lap times showing down at the bottom here. Laps are getting closer and closer, 3/10. The gap, improvements between Bursbro and Anton and Zizor, the gap's definitely closing in. So it's definitely very interesting to see if Zizor is able to hold on to a position by the end of the race. But for now, Zizor just has to make sure that they don't make any sort of big mistakes in order to keep their positions. If not, any sort of big mistakes going out wide, anything of that sort might just mean that Anton might just get closer, and that fight for that position that they already have right now for P6, for P7 actually, might get worse for them. As you see here, F Spirit already at the back of Zim. That move has happened earlier this time, earlier in the race, but right now coming down into the pseudo straights here at the back of the circuit, might have a move here in turn 10 or maybe turn 11. You see that Zim is a bit weaker on the braking zone at turn 11, so if they're able to make the move stick, maybe they're able to make a move before the oak tree section, or if not, they'll definitely have a better run on the exit at the back straight. As we see here as well, who's behind them? That is that Freya? That's not Freya, that's Plasma behind them. So definitely Plasma might want to just get away from them as soon as possible, but Plasma's not much of a hurry given that the gap they have, but every second of the gap helps for them to make sure that they are able to stay ahead. But Zim just easily let them both by, and now it's up to F Spirit to see when they want to let Plasma by coming down into the back straight. But yeah, actually earlier on this in practice this week, the session was set to be held at night. So imagine VRR at night. I don't think that will be very pleasant for most of the drivers here. So I'm glad that we are able to see a beautiful sunset here. If not, can you imagine us commentating at night here, barely seeing anything on track?
Yeah, I mean, this track doesn't have any floodlights or anything like that. So as we get back to sort of this battle here, I feel like that was probably kind of the best thing that Zim could have done at that point. There was sort of a clear, pretty clear pace difference here, but Zim has kind of quietly been having a really, really good race here. Is up 3 positions from where they started, was up 4 positions from where they started before that overtake there from F Spirit. And even though they were so close, you know, and that's going to be Zim off the road as soon as I mentioned how good of a race that they were having. So sorry, Zim. Sorry I did that. But yeah, it's going to be, you know, it was always kind of going to be F Spirit ending up in the lead at the end of that one. But, you know, at the same time, you do want to sort of give the gap to Plasma there so that Plasma can lap those cars safely. So sometimes when you're a back marker, you have to kind of give up your own fights for position in order to make sure that the leader can go through as safely as possible. As Josiah here is actually continuing to close back in on Guiando. Guiando was able to stretch out that gap quite significantly, you know, just kind of prior to the pit stop phase because of all of the battling between Josiah and Zizors. But now that Josiah is in clear air, has broken the gap to Zizors, has been able to quietly start coming back. And aside from a pretty big moment in the lap beforehand for this one, has been sort of slowly closing up that gap a little bit. So we'll see if anything goes off. Doesn't have a whole lot of time here to get it done as we are entering into the 12-minute mark, and we will soon have just 10 minutes left to go in this one. But Anton also continuing to get close to Zizors, so potentially 2 big battles brewing here on track towards the end, and we'll see who's able to pull it off.
Yeah, and as you can see here, comparing last lap, Anton having a 146.0 compared to Zizors 146.6. I think that Zizors might be struggling a little bit in terms of the tire wear here, as they didn't take the tires for the pit stop. So I think that's gonna really bite them in the rear end, as Anton might just have a very strong move if they're able to keep it still though. Zizors is pretty strong in defense, and also the fact that VIR is not really that good in terms of overtaking. You can see here only a couple of places that you're able to make a move, especially in sector 1. Sector in the back straight, if you're able to have a good run down to turn 11 and turn 12 around the Oak Tree section. But compared to these 2 drivers, the Mercedes as well as the BMW, both pretty strong around that sector. You definitely only have turn 1 and turn 2 to make a move on. So it's definitely interesting to see if Anton has learned a thing or two from the overtakes of Guiando as well as Josiah in front, to make sure that they might have an option at the end of the race.
Yeah, it's just sort of a matter of creating opportunities. I think at this point, the sort of pace difference that you're looking at as we take a look at our current and probably future race winner, Plasma here, continuing to get onto lap 29 here. We've only got probably a couple left, as that's going to be a purple lap from Plasma. So just showing it off out there. That's 44.6, so that's going to get them well clear of the pace of anybody else on track right now. Everybody else doing 46s, 47s at the moment, at the fastest, including our top runners, as that looked like it might have been a pass for position from Zim on Freya with a pretty significant gap. So that must have been a fairly big mistake there from Freya, likely some sort of incident there. But we'll take a look at that back on the replay, because last I checked in on Zim, I believe they were in P14, but it might have. That might have been an issue with our timing page there, so we'll take a look at, yeah, so that was that's, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the way that iRacing sort of connection issues happen. A lot of us are very familiar with the disappearing car. Sometimes if somebody has a particularly bad connection, their car will sort of blink in and out of existence, which is never good when you're trying to follow them closely, and also isn't good when we are trying to commentate, trying to figure out who's passing who on track and seeing where the battles are.
Yeah, definitely very interesting to see when cars blink. As a driver, it really scares you, especially when you're just about to overtake and the car just disappears. As I think Esprit had a little bit of a moment in front of him early on this race, and when the car disappears, you're like, where is it? Where is he? Is he going to the left? Is he going to the right? And you just hope that they just don't blink and phase into each other, or else bad things might happen. And I think you'll see as well that, yeah, Josiah is slowly catching up to Giando. You see there. Right now, lap 28, 3/10 ahead, closed in 3/10 on Giando. So it's going to be interesting to see if Josiah is able to keep it stable, as we have 8 minutes, close to 8 minutes remaining to this race. I think a lot of the drivers are going to be eager to push for the last few laps. With the lap times we have, as we see that the average lap time is about 145, 146. You basically have about 246, about 4 to 5 laps to go to make the move done. So you definitely have to make every second count, and I think this time where your fuel is light, where your tires, those that have soft tires, where the tires are still slightly fresh, tend to push up qualifying times if you can. And it's definitely a time where you have to hunker down, you have to focus on yourself, and it's definitely the time where people that are fit and also be able to stay concentrated and keep their composure up. Those are the drivers that are able to benefit from the last small remaining time that you have here to push out the last few laps that might get you a new position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point in the race, we've only got a few laps left, because that's Oily Rags pretty far off the road. Thankfully did not plow it into the tire barrier, but looked very close to doing that. Now there's going to be a battle, and that's going to be another big moment over the curb, over the grass for Oily, and suddenly what was a several second gap has turned into about 0.3 of a second between Oily Rags and the Bluey of Suzuka behind. So that's going to be give Suzuka perhaps an opportunity to get around here in the closing stages of this one and improve from P10. It's been not the best race so far for Suzuka, is down 2 places from where they started. So we'll take a look back here at Oily Rags going through the first sector here and see where this might have gone wrong. Clips that apex there just fine, and then just starts braking on the grass there. And when you have 2 wheels on the outside on the grass and 2 wheels on the asphalt, you have sort of 2 different coefficients of friction going on, 2 different levels of grip that you have. And that's kind of a recipe for disaster when you're trying to keep the car as stable as you can going into a corner, as this is going to be a pretty close look here for Suzuka. Oily Rags is going to get over to the inside very early, and that almost looked like a lift there from Oily Rags. So that was Oily Rags letting Suzuka by at the end of that one. Not really entirely sure what the thinking was there from Oily Rags. If I was, and that's going to be another off track from Oily Rags. So that is going to be that battle done. I was about to say, if I was Oily Rags in this situation with only a couple minutes left to go, I would be defending that position for everything I could do. But perhaps there was a pretty bad exit there. And Josiah is within a second now as Freya goes off in the background there. Might have been a bit of trouble with traffic there maybe for Guayando, and that has put Josiah right on the back of them right now. And I would love to see if there was any sort of moment there from Guayando that was able to that Josiah was able to catch up so much, or if it was just the raw pace of Josiah. So not really too much of an incident there, apparently, from Guayando. It was all just that pace from Josiah.
No, I can see here, looking at the last lap, Josiah was about close to 0.3 faster than Guayando compared to the last lap. So definitely Josiah has picked up the pace strong at the last final moments on this race. And Guayando, I think, will have to start working on making sure, think about where to defend, where do you see the gap between the car behind is increasing or decreasing. They do have the relative, so they are able to see where in certain parts of the corner on the track where they might be trying to show their pace compared to where each car is benefiting or not. So they might have to think about where to defend, where things might happen. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two defend for the position or fight for the position if Josiah is able to be close to the end by the end. And now we have 4 minutes remaining, actually less than 4 minutes remaining, as we see here. Lap 32, 56 minutes has gone by in this race. So it's going to be interesting to see here, as I think that's Zim in front of them. So it's going to be a little problem that Gyundo does not want to have. But Zim, being a very, very good bean that he is here this race, will definitely let the contending drivers by. And as you can see here, even for Zim being a slower driver, as long as they stay out of trouble, they have basically just climb the leaderboard without issue here. I think Zim, if they're smart enough, might let Josiah by, but Zim might. They do let them by, so definitely a smarter move there. Do not want to interfere with the fight for P5, but just like that, you see here Josiah already at the back of P1. So it'll be interesting to see the fight happen. Hopefully, it seems like they might have a fight in back straight for the next lap, but for now, we just have to look closely.
I'm surprised actually that Josiah was able to get that close, considering the fact that Guyando also had slipstream down that corner, as it's going to be less than 0.3 of a second now. It would be a very significant lunge from Josiah here for this to be a look, and it's not going to be. But it looks like the last couple of laps that Guyando has been losing quite a bit of time in sectors 2 and 3, which were the ones that we just went through. So I think, even beyond just having to navigate back markers here, as that's looks like David Young once again off the side of the road there. I think from Guyando, it's going to, it's going to be tough if Josiah is able to stick with them in this part of the track, this sector 1, and then is able to go a lot faster in sectors 2 and 3, as the gap is continuing to close down now as we're on board through this extremely terrifying section and into this fast left-hander going down into Oak Tree. It's not going to be a look here either, but it just keeps getting closer and closer between these two.
Yeah, Josiah definitely better on the brakes than most of the drivers on the grid, so that has definitely been the strong point for Josiah, but you can only be so good on the brakes when there's no one in front of them. But that's definitely where all the pace has been. But the MG power, as you see here, compared to the Lamborghini, means that Josiah might be able to have a look here, but it'll be very ambitious here to be able to go side by side on back straight. Will Josiah do it, or will they think better of it? They do go side by side in the back straight, and Josiah does leave space. Both of them very respectful, but Josiah has to concede back to the position, as it's not favorable for them to go side by side down into a roller coaster. It just means that Josiah knows where to overtake them. Now they might just think about how to be as close as possible for them to get actually a good run in the back straight, because they know now that they have the overrun on the straights, and given if they're able to be as close to them on the back straight as possible with 2 laps remaining, possibly, we might be able to see them to have a very good have a good run on the next couple of laps. As we see here, unfortunately, I think Anton still here at P8 might have a run on Z-Source. Both very close here. What's the gap here? About 4/10. It's gonna be now or never. They have to really find a gap here to make a move on Z-Source. If not, they might just be content staying at P8 at this moment.
Yeah, I think I figured out how, or part of how Josiah is getting so much more sort of straight line speed on that long back straight versus Guyando, like you were saying earlier in practice, keeping it in 5th gear over the peak of that hill, and they're very, very close to each other once again coming into Oak Tree, and Guyando is covering off the inside, but they're going to go ahead and go side by side. That is going to be almost the move done, but they're going to be side by side. Extremely bold move there from Josiah. Plasma has finished the race. That is going to be Plasma crossing the line, so I'm not sure if this is going to be the white flag lap. So this might be Josiah getting the P5 here. They're going into the braking zone, leading left and right. Guyando is not able to get as late on the brakes there as Josiah, and that is probably Guyando's last big opportunity to get this back. They're going to be crossing the line almost side by side, I have to imagine, as they are continuing through the final corner here. heading onto the straight, and they will be taking the checkered flag almost certainly. That's going to be Tombstone across the line in front of both of them, and that's going to be Josiah up into P5 with that last lap heroics. Going into Oak Tree, just was able to do basically the exact same thing that they did on Zzors of just weaving back, onto the, sort of telegraphing that they were going to go to the outside and then cutting back to the inside right under the braking zone and just catching them off guard. That has been a very effective move for Josiah throughout this race and an amazing drive from them. That was a wonderful drive from Josiah by the end of this, as we're going to go back to that move.
Oh, it's a big strong overrun here down into turn 10, and definitely has juked out Guiando for turn 11, and I think they won't be happy about what has happened, getting caught off guard just like that, but the move has stuck, and I have to say that is a very bold move by Josiah coming down into Oak Tree, and that has to be the move of the night to make sure that they get their position here in P5.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the last lap, no less, I think we both thought that it was going to be white flag next time around, but that's going to be all of our competitors across the line, with JPEG there finishing in 16th. And our podium is going to be Plasma, Walkman, and Klaus. So Walkman able to get away from Klaus there right at the end of the race. Klaus finishing in a respectable P3 here after also turning in a very good performance the last time out. We'll see Plasma take his donuts in the background as we go through the rest of our results here. Tombstone finishing in P4 there, and Josiah with the last lap move finishing in P5 ahead of Guiando with a pretty good drive today as well. Zzors wasn't able to keep up with those other two in their 3-car battle. Anton was right behind at the end of the race, about 3.5 tenths back, but wasn't able to try for anything across the line, so a close finish, but it's going to be P8 for Anton. And then rounding out our top 10 is Suzuka, getting in front of Oily Rags after that big incident there with Oily Rags 2 laps in a row on the exit of the first sector there. Paschetti and Hakio Isametsa, the two RNG cars, finishing together there in 12th and 13th. Zeem turning in a good performance today with that P14. F-Spirit ultimately able to get the best of them by the end of this one, but Zeem turning in a good performance today. Freya finished P15 along with JPEG Fox 2 laps behind in P16, and then we had Wolf and Foxdale P17 debuting. P18 was our last on-track winner, and then we have the retirement of Fez Fox in P19. But all of them are going to be getting the points for this one because we didn't have more than 20 cars on the grid. So a little bit of points for everyone, but it's going to be, why don't you take us through our championship standings as they stand now?
All right, so keep in mind that these are standings without prop rounds, so things will change a little bit as we coming down round 5, round 6. But for now, we see that Walkman still is up in front, 89 points. Plasma very close now behind them at P2 at 78 points. Klaus coming at P3. Suzuka still in P4. Guiando P5. RK has dropped 3 places, as you see here, at P6. Zzors being strong at P7. Paschetti still strong behind them. Fez, unfortunately, with the retirement, has dropped down 3 places this time around. Tombstone in P10. Oily Rex strong in P11. Josiah Waski definitely has gained a lot of points this time around, P12. Anton and P13. Jack Mace and P14, unfortunately not here. Elias as well dropping down on the grid due to their lack of participation. Hakio Isometsa at P16. Athena Leclerc at P17. Zine P18. Freya P19. F-Spirit, unfortunately with the struggling car this time around, but still gaining points because of the fact that they are here and getting points tonight at P20. Vex at P21. High Newbie at P22. Wolfin at P23. Mali Grusins, sorry, at P24. Camille's at P25. Ada P26. JPEG this time around at P27. Quincy at P28. P29 comes Recoware. P30 Calchan, sorry. P31 Washboy. P32 our new driver here, David Young. And to round off the points, we have Skylar at P33. The rest do not have points, but I bet they're back here for next round 5 and round 6. You'll get to see more drivers getting points here as we are going to Laguna Seca next round. Will you be interested? Will you be excited next round, Kady? I heard that you'll be driving next round.
I'll hopefully get a little bit of points on there. It'll help to not completely bin the car in the last 5 minutes of the race, but we'll see what happens. I'm actually really excited for Laguna. I think it's one of those tracks that you see it a lot, especially on iRacing. You see it a lot in the the slower car series, the production cars like the Mazda MX-5s and the Toyota GR86s race there all the time. But you don't often see it in sort of the faster, like more downforce cars like the GT3s. So it'll definitely be a really chaotic one. It'll be a really interesting one. And I'm always excited to get sent down the corkscrew. It's always fun.
All right, so it's been fun for this commentary, and like we said, round 5 is going to be at Laguna Seca next time around. It's going to be next week, same time. And if you're interested in getting more updates in learning how to join the community, or maybe just keep updated on what's happening on Simufur, you can join us through our Discord. Links in the description below. You can also check out our social media team on Twitter as well as on Blue Sky. We are on both channels right now, but it has been a fun night. Thanks for being here in the commentary booth, Kady, and thanks for being our broadcaster director here, Paliku'i. And this is gonna be Simufur signing off. Thanks everyone for joining by. Hope to see you guys next week.
Thank you so much. Good night.